Well, my pleasure this evening on the Coffee Court. Welcome to this Coffee Court where we ask the critical questions, most importantly, questions that matter. Of course, as the year comes to an end, we weigh in on the performance, the ups and downs when it comes to the private sector foundation. And joining me to paint this picture is the Chief Executive Officer. This is Dr. Stephen Asiimwe. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
A pleasure, Fred, and good evening, viewers.
Thank you so much. You've just selected a new board, isn't it?
Yes.
Maybe to bring us to speed, what are the new board members?
The PSFU every 3 years undergoes a corporate governance change. So by our constitution, a board member is elected once, renewable once, meaning that if you come back, you serve a 3-year term, and if your electorate, which is basically comprised of 12 sectors,
Okay.
re-elects you, then you are eligible one more time. So to put in context, you can serve for 6 years and then you don't come back.
Okay.
So this last board we had was led by Honorable Eli Karahanga, and the new board now, by virtue of the governance structure, is now being led by Mr. Humphrey Nzei, who is from the manufacturing sector.
Okay.
And so he's our new board chairman. And we had about 4 or 5 outgoing members, which means then that we now have another 5 new members coming on board.
Okay.
Yes.
So we are winding up the year. To some people, it's been a year of blessing. And some other people, it's a year of curses. Let me weigh in on the positive side when it comes to your performance as the private sector foundation.
That's a good question. PSFU has two levels of performance. The first level of performance is the institutional performance. As an institution, we've undergone a lot of changes, positive changes. We've done a restructuring, we've done a revamping, we are reviewing our strategy, and we should be rolling it out next year.
Okay.
We have reorganized and recalibrated our manuals, our systems, our structures, our staffing. PSFU has one of the best led institutions in this country. Very, very highly experienced, trained, young, versatile, professional people.
What confirms this?
You can confirm this by our profile. If you did a balanced scorecard on our HR and our people structure, it's one of the best. And I've led many institutions in this country and in the region. I think that PSFU provides one of that. Okay. So as an institution, at that level, I think we've really made a lot of strides. Moreover, coming out of a situation where we had lost our CEO last year and the challenges that we went through during COVID.
Okay.
So that's one level. The second level is that when His Excellency the President opened up the economy in January, our GDP performance had been halved from about 6 point something to 3. And all of that was attributed to the challenges of COVID.
Okay.
We started the year with a bang, with the opening at the end of January. Of course, unfortunately, we had all this invasion of Ukraine and the spillovers of the supply chain issues that affected the COVID time globally. The good news is that the economy began to pick up like a car which is just starting. So you start with gear 1, 2, 3, and then we are now rolling to 4 and 5.
So you're suggesting that the economy has picked up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
The economy has picked up, although it picked up on the backdrop of challenges.
Which sectors have picked up?
I think all of them. What we need to be careful is how have they picked up. I think all of them picked up. The challenge was that many of them were injured as a result of the impact of COVID-19 that affected all businesses. The challenge again was that people did not have enough money in their pockets to buy, and that affected who was selling. So supply demand challenges. But of course, as schools opened, so you had more students going back to school, more food, more uniform. The challenge was those who were supplying were either financially bankrupt, heavily indebted. Many businesses closed, but also we were able to negotiate with banks and government, and one of the biggest things that we achieved was that we were able to convince government not to introduce new taxes.
Which
in
they
the last
did
budget.
score.
Yes.
If you allude to that, business for people who are not yet in debt, one listening to us would actually think we are telling lies.
No, they're indebted.
Many people still
Indebted, absolutely. Everybody was indebted, including the banks, which were lending. They were indebted because they were not lending. You see, a bank is also a business. Shareholders put money in a bank with the biggest hope that the money will be lent and what comes back as interest will be accrued as profits. So don't get me wrong, everybody was indebted, even the government.
So the hopes that many of us had, if we were not to run to government, would run to private sector foundation. And many of us think you have actually been silent about some of these issues.
No, we can't be silent. The budget had budget proposals. 74% of what we gave government as proposals were adopted out of 100, which was the first time in the history of this country.
What are these proposals, Doctor?
They range from everything from no new taxes to incentives to the need for intervention in the lending regime, extending the repayment period, as opposed more support for private businesses through lower collateral, more money that would be accessed. We pushed for heavy uptake or support for money from UDB, microfinance institutions. They need to open the borders had been a problem. Things like requirements for people to have COVID tests, for instance, at the airport. In tourism, there was a very strict regime of how tourists would access the country.
I would think
we removed all of that.
Those have been of help to probably the CEOs that head institutions, but to the Muntu ones, the
Muntu ones see benefits from every visitor who comes into the country. Tourism up to 2019 was the #1 foreign exchange earner, bringing 10% of GDP. So by the fact that you opened the skies so that everybody would come into the country meant that when the tourists or the visitor comes into the country, everybody earns money at every value chain. The transporter, the man at the visa office, the person who receives them at the hotel. Every time they go out, they spend money. The way money works is someone has to buy, another one has to sell. So the more buyers you have, the more sellers you have, and therefore the money spreads into the economy. And in very, very basic terms, that's what we've been pushing for. We need more money to be circulating back and forth so that people earn, others sell, and that way everybody gets a share of the action.
Isn't it a lie, really? You talk about an economy which has had unpredictable central bank rates. Today it is going high, and chances of it getting down are actually no more. Talking about the inflation rate which keeps on going to 10.8, now we are at 10.7. So that's the economy you are talking about, which has been positive on the business community.
Well, in mathematics we say that if you're coming from sub-zero and you make a 10% leap, you're better than the guy who has moved from +1 to +2.
As long as you can predict where you're going. So this is an unpredictable...
Yes, in many ways than one. Again, it's like a hospital patient. The worst case scenario, you're in intensive care. If you get better, you go to high dependence unit, and from high dependence unit, you go to close observation. That's how economies work. The whole country suffered, collapsed completely. And it was not just a Ugandan problem, it was an East African problem, it was an African problem, it was a global problem. To the extent that the whole world shut down. Now, when we opened, we were one of the few countries that was able to balance between life and livelihood. We lost so many people.
That is true.
Very useful people. Everybody who died during COVID was a useful person, including we were one of the biggest hit victims. PSFU lost an executive director. And that is not a small thing. But the fact that we were now able to save others who could have died, in my view, was a huge achievement, and we want to thank government for that. But then it was necessary that we balance, that you can't lock for too long Otherwise, you'll all die because of all these pressures that you're talking about. In my view, I think that was a major achievement. And the fact that we have managed to crawl slowly out of the dark hole into some light is a level of achievement. Can we do more? Of course we can.
Are you saying we are still at a level of growing as an economy, or we've moved past that? From your view as the person in charge of the private sector?
In my view, I think that we have made a lot of strides in coming out of what was the worst case scenario. Now, as a result of COVID-19 and the lockdown, businesses collapsed, shut down, and many were impaired. The fact that they can, and many have been resuscitated in one way or another, others have actually re-engineered themselves. So for instance, some people got new opportunities during COVID. You know, once upon a time there was no sterilizer. Oxygen manufacturers, people going into health. The health sector made a lot of money as a result of more patients coming and the need for intervention. What we were never prepared for was an epidemic of this scale. I mean, we were never, nobody ever knew that one day a disease will kill the whole world. And it also showed we were very interdependent. But what was still unfortunate in our view is that Uganda, more than any country, has now had Ebola singularly. And this has affected our performance, at least in the last 18 or so weeks.
And now we are past that.
We are getting out of it, but it also injured us very many ways. But I want to be optimistic that 2023 is going to be a good year. For reasons that where we are now is better than where we were, what we call a year in, year out perspective. We were not like this as of December 2021.
So what informs your prediction?
My prediction is very obvious, that the economy is open, that buying and selling is now a norm, and the fact that many of our development partners have come on the table with us, both government and private sector. I will tell you that in this last year alone, Private Sector Foundation decided to look at markets. We went to Kenya, we went to Burundi, we went to Tanzania, we went to DRC, we went to South Sudan. DRC joined us as a member of the East African community. We are now looking at Somalia, we're looking at United Arab Emirates, we've just come from Vietnam, our teams are in Washington, D.C. and America. We are beginning to open our markets to the external opportunities that are available for export.
So how does I am concerned about the Muntu because he subscribes to the apex body, which is a PSFU. You have people from Uzia, you have people from Federation, you have people from Chamber of Commerce. All these association members that are just crippling. So how do they benefit from the markets you are talking about, the African continent?
Uganda is an SME economy. Remember that over 67% of our business portfolio comprises of small, actually micro, small and medium enterprises. Now, every export you see leaving this country has been contributed, even at farm hold level. So the total amalgamation of these small little groups creates a much bigger mass portfolio of exports. Omuntu wa wansi, in our view, is a very, very important person at PSFU. Be it coffee, tea, sim, sunflower, the entire agricultural base is largely subscribed by the small and medium enterprise. The good news I have for them is that starting next year in January, government, with support from the World Bank and other multilateral institutions, have put together funds. We have a big fund coming for women called GROW. GROW is an acronym for Generating Opportunities for Women in Employment. We have another program called INVITE, Investment for Transformation and Employment. We have a program under MasterCard Foundation, which we are trying to support youth programs. And many, many other programs that are going to come in from manufacturers, from the SME Foundation, from the women groups, etc., etc. Now, our work is to, among other things, ensure that we create an enabling environment for our business people to be able to grow increase productivity, but also absorb as many young people that are leaving universities and tertiary institutions.
If I am an investor, from whichever point you would want to pick it from, and I want to invest my money in the next coming year, what would you advise me as somebody in charge of the Private Sector Foundation?
One, I would advise you to invest in information.
Do I eat information?
That information is power. It's important that when you are making an investment, you make an investment with an informed position.
So how does it...
At PSFU, we help with business development services, and we also can direct you to the best advisory services you would want. One of the things we clearly and strongly recommend is that you become a member. You subscribe to PSFU's membership base so that we can point you into the direction of the 12 sectors that we oversee.
So you talked about information?
Yes, okay. Information and information asymmetry. The second thing is that many sectors are productive. The third issue is...
Which sector to be
I will tell you, largely speaking, all the sectors are productive. It is where your competence base provides for an enabling environment. So, for instance, if you are an IT person, I cannot tell you to go outside IT, or if you have an IT supportive element. So largely speaking, you can come to us at PSFU. We have a research team, we have a business development team, we have a membership team, and we can help support you in that area.
So those are only two sectors. You've talked about information.
No, you see, information is what will facilitate where you invest. But like I said, broadly speaking, the economy is a great place to be it in manufacturing, agriculture, ICT, tourism and hospitality, in logistics and transport, creative arts, in the music industry, huge business, in health, in education, in trade, in oil and gas, minerals and extractives. I mean, Uganda is a great place to invest in, and we have it there, and therefore everybody can come and be a part of this discussion.
Mr. Brown, the year is coming to an end. Your parting shot or your final message to Ugandans out there that subscribes to the Private Sector Foundation, Mr. CEO.
First of all, I want to thank all the business people, whether or not you are part of PSFU, that you have been resilient, and that you have been part and parcel of ensuring that this economy grows. I want to thank government. I want to thank all the people who watch Smart 24 TV. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, but most importantly, statistics have shown that the largest number of people in hospitals are accident victims. I would like to call upon all the Ugandans to be careful while driving on the road. Our people who ride border borders, please ride carefully. Christmas and the New Year are times when everybody is excited. Please drive carefully, drive slowly. We've lost so many people, and therefore it's important that that we become good and responsible road users. And so drive, keep safe, and next year is going to be a fantastic year, and come to PSFU for anything related to business. Thank you very much.
Well, a good leader is one who does not only point you where you're coming from, but also tells you or makes a prediction of where you're heading. Dr. Stephen Asiimwe, thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you, Fred.
He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. And that is it from the Coffee Court. My name is Makubuya, Fred.